Okay. Hi. Welcome to Service Binding Operator Weekly Call. Today is July 8th, and today we have few agenda for the discussion. First, we are going to do this sprint planning. Yeah, Predrag, you can share and start.
Sure. All right. Can you see my screen?
Coming up. Yep.
So, I don't have much to propose. So we have a number of issues which in the previous sprint which are not finished. One of them is to make successful service binding immutable. This is still pending in a PR, which is still work in progress. I really hope that Igor, I mean, to be more precise, the PR content is there. I did the review there, and there's some. I mean, I have some actions item for Igor, but there is one thing which needs to be checked, and I'm waiting for Igor to give us the feedback. Namely, on the OpenShift 406, the bundle we generate now doesn't get installed. It fails on installing operator, and we really need to figure out what's happening to understand if we want to drop support for 406 or like fix is easy, and then we can still support 406. But I really need a feedback from Igor on that. That particular PR is blocking the work on the ticket, which is about protecting against privilege escalation, because that PR is introducing webhooks, and then these webhooks are further consumed and expanded should be expanded in that another ticket. So we're kind of blocked there.
One question.
Yeah.
So can we only take that webhook infra related thing into separate PR and then merge it first, so that
Well, but
we
this
can unblock
PR
it?
is very close to merge. We only need to have as I said, I did a review, and I need just the feedback to see what's going on OpenShift 4.6. And after that, we can decide whether we're gonna fix it quickly or drop support for 4.6. But this is the kind of information we are missing now from Igor. But this is blocking that. Then again, we have this Airbag support, which was, by the way, Bama, I sent you an invite to this team, so I cannot really assign tickets for you. So were you able to find the invite or like enroll yourself in the Red Hat developer organization?
So yeah, Jasper added me to the Red Hat developers yesterday. Like I accepted the invite today.
Okay, so let me then see if I can re-invite you or
Yeah.
I should have included his. I should have added him to the app services or service binding operator, I should say, group. But
okay,
please just double check. Yeah.
The app service.
Bama, I hope you must be using that
No,
Red Hat
okay.
email ID, right? For the invite. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think it's not really necessary, but so let's see. Members.
Nope. Apparently not.
Apparently not. So Bama, what was your? Can you just?
AMSEHRN.
Okay.
Or some
Now,
other. Okay, it's the same Bama,
that's
right?
you. Okay, so Red Hat Helm and Red Hat. So for Helm, do you need to be? Okay, whatever.
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay, now you're automatically added. Good. And so then I'll assign this to you. But
That can be assigned there. Okay.
yeah. So, but that's the issue, which is again. So we need it's like we need to, today you said that there is an issue with the PRs, so some jobs are failing. So we need to also to merge this before really working on this, because only with this new cluster role we can then fine tune and narrow down stuff. So there are some interdependencies here. Baju is working on the user guide. So initially, Baju, what was this estimated at what? Like how many points? Like a half of the sprint?
I was given 8. I started on last Thursday. So, but I think can we split this into multiple stories like Jasper suggested? Right now I'm working only on the kickstart or getting started part. So that, so what should I do? Like I can create multiple stories here itself, or is it in Jira?
Well, I don't know. Like this is the issue. So we can have multiple PRs later on, but you're now working against a fully different repo. So I would keep the one story issue here in our repo, and then of course, we can break it up internally into multiple stories. But eventually, we're gonna push that user guide as a single thing when it's ready, right? So we are not going to just add now quick start to the project and then add other things and so on. So it will be totally confusing, right? So we work in an internal repo on documentation, and when this is ready, it's going to be reflected in a single, say, PR containing just the full user doc. At least I would like to have this. So, but anyway, this is the work you are doing independently in how many stories this is going to be divided or not. And then I'm finishing this service binding CRD stuff, like making ready probably this week for the review. Hopefully it's going to be merged next week. So there is now this drop support for end services and application. We have a topic about that. So I would suggest that we can rethink that. So since we are busy, is there anything, and I'm not seeing anything else on this GA list, is there anything else we would like to start working on this sprint? And if yes, what will be that?
No, I think I'll be focusing only the documentation. So
Okay.
nothing from my side. Bama or
Anybody else?
No, I'll focus on that. Narrow down the service account.
Yeah, and so Igor is next week on PTO. So like Jasper, like 1 or 2 weeks?
Just 1 week, as far as I know.
Okay, but like that, like a 1/3 of the sprint. So once he's back, then we're gonna see. I assume I'm gonna probably take over that immutability PR and bring it to the end next week, so that I can unblock ourselves on the privilege escalation stuff. So yeah.
Okay.
Baiju, a small request. So as and when you complete a section and you feel it is okay, it has enough meat, then can you please send it for the review so that I can also scope something out for the OCP content if possible for the OCP talk. So that way work will happen simultaneously.
okay, yeah. So right now that PR which I sent is not ready for review.
I know.
Okay, yeah. So once it is ready, I'll ping you about that. Okay.
Yeah, that works fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we move to the next topic then?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to. I'll share my screen.
Thank you.
So. Something yesterday I learned during demo yesterday that if I start sharing and if somebody else sharing afterwards, I think my sharing still will be there, right? It will not go away unless I stop it. Yeah. Somebody ping me after that during the demo that my screen is still visible. Okay. Yeah, so let's move on to the next topic, that is multiple service support. Yeah, I think Predrag added this one. There is an ongoing discussion. Yeah, yesterday there was some discussion about that. So Predrag, can you lead the discussion about that?
Yeah. So Baju, if you can you open your pull request? Let's just to have a context for that.
Yeah, sure. 1 minute. Let me open that document. Okay, it's better to view it like a file. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so together yesterday, Baju and myself, we had a conversation about this quick start example. And while doing that, so it came to us that having a way to define multiple services and service binding is at least useful for what we are trying to achieve now in this quick start example. And I'll give you the context. So what we're trying to do now, so we have selected Crunchy Postgres operator. It's an operator which provisions Postgres databases based on a CR you submit to the cluster. And this operator creates, provisions an instance, and along to that generates a secret containing username and password you need to use to access that database. However, we thought we could use then this secret as a direct secret reference and refer it in a service binding, and that secret will be injected in the application, and the application can use that to access the database. Unfortunately, that secret contains only username and password, so it doesn't contain any other information like database name or database URL. And in order to add this, Baju's first idea was to create another secret which contains everything. Now, from doc point of view, this is additional step, and it's really, I would say confusing to use that we now suddenly create manual and additional secret by copying some content from some other secret. The informations we need, this binding data we need, they are there, but on the CR, which describes the database, and there you have a database name, and then there you have the host URL and other things. So currently, with our API and having a way to add multiple services, which are then injected as a logical one thing in the application, we can really achieve that and make the quick start way more sound. So we would need to refer that database resource and add some annotations on that resource. So saying, okay, where is the database name and where is the host URL? And the second resource, we're gonna refer that generated secret. And then as a result of that, service binding operator is going to generate proper binding secret containing all the data application needs for accessing the service. And yeah, so then after this discussion, so but you point me to an issue on the spec side. So Shubik proposed like almost a year ago that the spec adds a way to support multiple services. And this is still open and marked for release candidate 3. So we are still in the release candidate 2. So it's not really rejected or something else. So given that there is now some interesting discussion there we started, so about a way how we can compose maybe some provision service for multiple services. But Arthur from IBM had an interesting proposal there. So instead of having these multiple service fields, we could introduce additional field to the service field where we can state additional resources which are kind of belonging to that same service. So, and I like that idea.
Yeah.
So we could double check this on today in the community call what they think. But until this is not kind of resolved or not, I see a value in our API having, and only now I see a value having the possibility to specify multiple services, because this opens up possibility to bind way more services now without even trying to modify them and make them more compatible with the spec, so to say. So I would propose that we keep that thing inside of our API.
So let's be very careful about the use case, because the use case that you describe is not about binding multiple services. It's still about binding a single services, but from multiple sources of information.
True. Yeah.
So let's be careful about that, because I think when we have been discussing about dropping the support for binding multiple services, it was to keep the service binding resource as a single unit that is mapping one service to one application. And I think if you start to have service bindings that are going to mix different services, if you want to drop one for another one, then you have to replace your entire service binding definition instead of dropping only one of the resource. And that makes me confusing. I think one instance of service binding should bind one service with the application. I think this is still a good goal to keep keep in mind. But now about the ability to have or to compose a service binding with annotations that are coming from different resources, but which are all as related to a single service, I think it makes sense. And when I say service, I say the service like MongoDB, like Crunchy, PostgreSQL database, or whatever other services that you can have in mind. I'm not thinking about all the different resources in the sense of Kubernetes. So I'm also leaning towards the solution that is proposed by Arthur. I think it makes sense to me, and I will not try to. I will try to be very specific and try to be very clear to the user. When you want to create a connection between your application and a service, you can compose that by taking the different metadata from different Kubernetes resources, but they should all belong to the same application. Otherwise, it's going to be confusing.
Okay. I mean, I generally agree. The only no, I agree more than generally. Okay. But what I want to just not to like block each other like now on work. How about that we kind of remove that multiple, like the multiple service support after we introduce a way to specify additional resources. Why I'm asking this? Because right now in the user doc, we could use that multiple service thing just to validate things are working. And once this new field is there, then we can easily switch in the user doc. That's the only ask I would have, maybe to have just introduce that additional resource field on the service and then drop afterwards the multiple service support. Is that okay for you?
Yeah, it is okay. The only second ask that I will have on top of yours is about the documentation, that we make sure that in the documentation this is properly explained, and we should explain when the user will need this. In fact, that is the most important. We need to put ourselves into the shoes of the users, which is, hey, okay, so I can do that, but I don't really see why I would need to do it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I just want to enable Bajou to make quick start as compact or like as simple as possible, which works right now, and using multiple services would work now. And then like that he can move on the other parts, and so we can actually start.
Absolutely. And I agree with you that the idea of in the quick start to create a dedicated secret with all the fields that we need and then to do the service binding, I agree with you that it decreases the value of service binding. If I'm new to service binding, I will not understand. Okay, so what is the advantage of the solution? So we have to be careful about that, because yes, you can do it, but actually the fact that you can do it is not necessarily the fact that you will do it, because there's maybe no value into doing so. So
Okay.
so I'm
So,
with you on this.
Bama?
Sri, I think.
Or Shri?
yeah, just wanted to say that if this is coming like an advanced concept, which initially the user might not require, but you think as a new user it is a good to know, then you can, at the end of the quick start guide, you can put it under additional resources. Like if you want to know more about it, which is, then you can go here, and that can lead to the user to the advanced section of the documentation, right? You
So
can just
here the point is that even for the sample and the quick start that we want to build, we need to go into that kind of things and this kind of use case. So
yes, as a
even if
user,
it's-
as a user, all I want is like I need a quick setup. The guide should be very nimble, very lightweight for me, and agile.
yeah,
That is the focus that as a user I would want when I'm looking at a document.
Right.
absolutely agree.
I would
but-
expect like a couple of just bullet points, single liners where you just copy to your terminal and then you're done. So nothing else. All the magic is hidden from you. And of course, if you now want to dig deeper, then you have links. You can go there and there will be other chapters explaining the details. But in order to really deploy a database and bind it to application, that should be like just a couple of simple steps you just paste into your terminal, nothing else.
Otherwise, the user will get scared.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, Baju, like, do you have some newer version of the PR since we discussed it yesterday? So,
No, not yet. I'm
okay.
facing some couple of challenges. One was, okay, not really. Yeah, one I'm trying to figure out how to use the init container to initialize the database schema and populate the sample data. That is one thing. And then another one is that I'm finding it difficult with that tool. I mean, what we are using, what is called, to publish a static file, like to keep this shell script or YAML file, so that I could upload directly there and then use it. So these are the two
Seven,
things.
is there any like a way to upload, say, YAML
Yeah.
files in that thing?
I found one way. There is a static file like that is mainly added for supporting images, CSS files and all. So I thought I could use the same, but for some reason that link is not working properly. Maybe I need to look at that configuration, that the tools configuration, why it is not coming.
But to be honest, I would not really invest too much time right now in this. I would simply keep your files on a GitHub gist or somewhere, and then once this is everything polished, then we can think about presentation and where to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll go in that way. So for now, I'll keep it somewhere else and then continue and then figure out this later. Yeah, but for populating database, I hope that won't take much time figuring out how to use init container for that purpose.
Okay. So Baju, just one thing, just to double check. Yesterday in the Slack, you mentioned that you would like to hear about these multi-service things from the others. So do we have now?
So I think now
consensus?
I heard from Steven, so he's okay to use that feature. My only concern was that this was some feature that we are going to deprecate sooner or later. So using such a feature as the quicks in the beginning of the document itself felt good for me. That was my concern.
But I would definitely then now create a ticket, an issue which is going to be part of GA and could be prioritized to be the very next things to work on, to add this additional resource field, and so that we can practically support that that thing on in our operator, and we can see, so if the spec wants to accept this or not, but at least we're gonna have it on our side in our API.
Okay. You mean in the CRD that we are using, right? Not in the spec CRD.
Right.
Okay.
And we can definitely, I would bring that topic today, if you don't mind, about adding this additional field on the services on the spec community call to see what is the resonance there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay. And we can move on to the issues with the spec resource mapping. And the two things you added related, but is it same thing or idea drop or?
It's not the same, but like I was today, after making these comments, I was kind of thinking about even more radical solution. But I mean, this radical solution also needs to contain some kind of mechanism to refer stuff, and then it's in a kind of way overlapping. So like, if you want to open these comments, just one thing. So we were, I mean, and to give context to the others, since the last call, we and Raju was working also his private implementation. He recognized, and the others also, Scott from VMware, he didn't implement in their implementation application resource mapping support. People are now slowly recognizing that part of the spec is kind of not clear, or like we don't know how we're going to actually support what the spec is stating. And the major problem is there that we need to know location of inside of the application resource.
Sorry, can I give a little background about what are the use cases and all? I had a comment about that. My understanding, is it okay? Then we can come to the solution part.
One about the use case, but I just want to mention the mechanism. So we need to have a mechanism to locate.
Yeah, but location is more about the solution part, right? Let's understand this use cases first. Why it was added first? Then people will get a much more better context.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it okay? Yeah. So this is my understanding. Okay. Anyway, as I understand, these are the two primary use cases for application resource mapping. It was there, even we have a limited support for this kind of support, right? We can we call it a different name. It's called custom binding. That means they can set the location of the container. That feature is even secret also they can set. This feature is there in our operator right now. So this was one use case, that was to project bindings into an intermediate resource. So this is the IBM project, and looks like this is something very critical project for IBM. Okay, and this runtime component operator, as you can see here, they are using this volume on even init container, all the thing. And by looking at this project, I see that this is okay, correct me wrong if this is my understanding. See, they have two projects called AppSody operator. I heard in some conference they were talking about this AppSody operator and Open Laboratory operator. I guess these are some of the key products. I don't know how it is related to Red Hat projects, I'm not sure, but looks like that means this project and this runtime component operator is such a base project used by some of their key operators. So that means there is a definite use case for that. And the other use case, which is...
Now, what is the... Sorry, Burju, but I don't get it. Like, can you explain what is the use case?
Yeah. Use
because
case
you wanted to say, what is the use case?
Yeah. Use case, you see here, they have this operator, that means you can think like this is like an application, but this is not the destined application, I would say. That means this is like a temporary space where they're keeping the volume. And you see, okay, I don't know exact how the operator works, but from the description from Arthur and others, my understanding is they keep this kind of information captured here as an attribute. As you can see, there is something called runtime component spec, right? And later, when this operator responsibility is to inject this into the destined location, that could be some real port specable resource, could be deployment or something like that. But meanwhile, this application is like an intermediate operator, which acts before the final application deployment and the backing service or any other operator, right?
So again, what is the use case from the service binding operator point of view?
Yeah,
What
so
kind
that
of
means
use
we
case
need,
service binding needs to support?
yeah, that means the service binding need to project into not ports, not a typical port spec. Instead of that, they need to inject into this locations. See, this is a custom resource, right? In this custom resource, they have this volume. As you can see here, they have this volume mount, and you can see here init containers. There are some sidecar containers. So this all are nothing but the locations. They need this projections happening.
So if I may summarize, so service binding, currently service binding, the spec talks about injecting projections into application resources, standard Kubernetes resources like deployment pods,
Correct. Yes.
jobs, and so on. And we have a need to support some custom application resources which are not pod speccable, or
Correct.
maybe even they're pod speccable, but the location of that pod speccable part is under some custom path, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So that
And for
we
that,
that means we have support for that. In we called custom binding or something like that, right? To some, yeah.
now
In our operator.
for that spec introduced that application resource mapping resource.
Yes, yes.
So
yes.
that resource should describe where in a given group API version, like a given resource, should specify the locations which are interesting for the service binding operator, so that service binding operator knows where to inject relevant information so that the bindings are available. And that's all good. The only problem I see here is that the tool they're using, and that's JSON path, is not appropriate.
That I have a concern about that also. But let me complete
Right.
the other use case also. Then we can. So that is one use case. The second use case is that there are project bindings in partially port speckle, and that's something I came up. The meaning I'm looking at specifically the cron job. Cron job is, if you call whether it's a port speckable or not, it is not exactly. The only difference that you could see in a cron job is, by the way, built-in resource in Kubernetes. The only difference that you notice is here is that instead of using a template, for some reason they're using the word job template as the attribute. That means it becomes against our pattern that we are using for what is called a port speckable. So that's only difference. Otherwise, see, that means my opinion, this resource should be there in every case. Maybe they can be handled as a special case, or this could be applied every.
Yeah, but this is also pod speccable. The only
No,
difference
not really pod spec. This is, the pod spec means this is not it's called template in a typical any like deployment, demand set, everywhere it's called template, whereas here it is called job template.
Yeah, but it's pod speccable. The only thing, the pod speccable, the final location, when you reach that location, that's pod speccable. What is different is the path to that.
Yeah.
Therefore,
right,
it's pod speccable.
Yeah. In
So,
that sense, yes.
In that sense, that's the thing. So, but the way how we are specifying that location is kind of, it's really problematic, because JSON path is not meant for that. JSON path is a query language which filters out the values out of some data structure. It doesn't give you location of that data structure, but it gives you just the values which are matched by the query. And therefore, as you have seen and you have also experienced, in many cases, like there are parts of the pod speccable object which are optional, like environmental variables, like volumes. And so if you don't have them in your resource, the JSON path will return you empty list. And from that, you cannot simply figure out where you should inject actually the stuff. So that's the problem. And the second problem is that even if you get something back, the JSON path is not constructed that you can actually modify now values which are returned.
Can I ask maybe a stupid question? But
yeah.
I guess, thank you, I can ask stupid question.
No.
So, what is exactly a pod speckable container or deployment, or what do
Yeah.
What is this,
Packable.
in fact?
It's a name of the type in the Kubernetes
Uh,
where you
no,
practically
it is
describe.
not really a Kubernetes concept as such, but that's some pattern that you can observe in Kubernetes resources.
Yeah, but like with that, you specify practically what are the containers you're going to run in a pod, what are the environmental variables accessible, volumes, and those kind of things. So it's a kind of a way, when you say pod specable, it's some kind of description of a pod, which going to be kind of started eventually when this resource is deployed. So you
Yeah.
have this kind of,
Pod specable containers.
that kind of type,
So how
like
do
that
I-
kind of structure is a part of, say, deployment resource. It's a part
Okay.
of
Job,
Usually it's
other
developed-
cron job, etc.
cron job, etc. This is something which is part of the Kubernetes API. So you have a pods are also pod specable, but you have like more complex structures which contain that kind of pod specable types like deployments, replica sets, and what's not. Yeah.
Okay. And is
Yeah, you know, this
often
abstraction
that-
we select in the spec, they use this. Oh, sorry. Uh, Let me just elaborate a little more. So the spec chosen this approach because, you know, many of the resources, like Predrag was pointing out, the deployment or, you know, replica setup, even we Red Hat had, OpenShift had something called deployment config. I guess that's, I don't know, it's no more encouraged to use, but still. So like that, all these resources are having a pod within that. So that means the injection, the projection or binding injection designed in such a way that the resources will be conforming to this pod specification. So that means we know the location where and all the injection binding should happen, like container or init container, like that. Yeah.
That's clear. Thank you. That's clear.
Okay, but major concern is the way how you're going to specify location, and that's problematic. So in my opinion, and I don't know, Baju, you have experienced troubles as well. So I would like to propose to the spec that we replace JSON path with something which is really meant for locating stuff, and JSON pointer is the standard for that.
Okay, I am not sure about that. My proposal would be just to use some dot separated values of strings, because that's only
Why
used
you're
in
not sure about that?
because I don't know. Again, I am getting a deterministic way of to access that particular attribute, and I don't want to get more than 0 or more. I want to get one value.
But did you check the spec? So the spec
Okay,
is
this
exactly.
case for some reason it is not even opening for me. I don't know, my network problem or something. And yeah, but I had a look at some this customize. I searched for the customize, and I couldn't find you know, the usage of this JSON pointer within that. So
Well, it's there. It's there.
yeah, but are you sure that it gives exactly one value, or we can construct the query that way?
Take a look at the spec, please. I mean, this is exactly that.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I'll try to use some other way to access this site. For some reason, it's not opening for me.
Or like just Google for JSON pointer spec, so you will probably find that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I would like to propose, that we go away from JSON path. So maybe we're gonna come with something else, but I mean, there is already standard, and we, instead of just inventing our own convention with like, you know, paths like things, so why not really using which is already established standard and used by many? That's my kind of way of reasoning. Instead of having custom something, let's maybe adopt something which is good for that purpose.
Yeah. Why don't you think that just as a dot separators values of strings, why do we need a this kind of JSON spec or JSON pointer? Just
because you have a plan, because it's an established standard, so we should base ourselves on already existing standards.
But we know
and you have implementation which support that. So we're
I
gonna
don't
reduce
know.
our work. Like,
see, ultimately, see, you're going to use something like unstructured sex API to set the values like this,
I
right?
don't know about that. Like seriously, we should not speak of in the spec about the implementation. Maybe we can give some hints, but like the spec itself should be clear about what are the standards used, and then left to the vendors to decide whether they're gonna write custom parser or they're gonna use already existing library, which like fits their needs. But we should not really overload our spec, say with some paths, like description of the paths and how this path should look like, and so on. It's way simpler if you say, this reference to the location follows JSON pointer or whatever standard, and it's clear for everybody. Then you can find more details in that spec, how this spec works, and so on. So we should keep our spec as possible, minimal and like short in that sense.
Yeah. So anyway, for us, we are not going to implement this feature for now, right? This service application
It's
resource
not
map.
implementable. It's not really. I'm thinking this is not really implementable in all possible cases. So simply we cannot implement because I don't know the location of the things. So I don't know how. I don't have a tool to inject, say, volume mounts or secrets in a given locations.
Yeah.
And like along with that, so like now if we are really reworking this, I came to idea that we even like propose to drop application resource mapping as such, and move that information which is needed for service binding operator on CRDs. So we can keep them as annotations there, and we don't need to introduce any additional custom resource. We don't need to watch for it. So we can simply, keep some annotations with locations on CRDs and then achieve the very same behavior.
Okay.
I mean, what do you think about that?
I don't know whether annotations is a good idea, because this information is something global, and this
Well,
application
CRD
resource.
is global. CRD of resource is global, cluster scope thing. So why introducing something which additional cluster scope resource where we already have, and we have a similar approach to the provision services. We put annotation on them, signaling that this is a provision service. So we can have some annotation saying, okay, this is the location of things if you want to inject something into me.
Okay, you're talking about the annotation for the CRD of the service binding itself, right?
No, on the application, on custom, on application CRD. So you see, store relevant data in application CRD annotation, similar to provision service CRD.
So how about resources like built-ins, like what was that resource? Yeah, this cron
Well,
job.
for the standard Kubernetes jobs, we should support them out of the box. So this is just the limited number of resources we can support really out of the box. I don't see any issue with that.
And if I may, I think speaking about this use case and so on, it will be so much easier if we have a sample to look at the same time. I know it's tricky, but at the same time, it feels that if we can have a good sample to illustrate the use case, how it works, what we want to achieve on that sample.
No, definitely. I just wanted to. I didn't want that was just like half an hour before the meeting. I came to the idea. I just wanted to check within this group if this makes sense, and then of course, if we want to now talk to the community, to the specs, so we would need to build up a better example and things. I just want to verify if this really makes sense or it's complete garbage.
Not complete garbage or anything, but I'd like the idea of having a CRD explicitly specifying. But the only concern is that the way how it is described. JSON path is the one concern, and there are a couple of other issues that already added into the spec meeting. So okay, so probably those things once addressed, I guess it is good in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see what others says in this spec community about that concerns that we raised, and we can discuss further. Meanwhile, let's not implement this feature for now. I am fine with that.
I can't. I mean, that's what I want. I can't.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we are done with our agenda topics, right? Anybody else want to talk about anything? It's almost, yeah. And who want to do this moderation and notes? I'm not taking notes today. Anything was anyway. Recording is there. So for next meeting, who want to be the moderator, and who want to take notes?
I can moderate.
Okay. Who want to take notes?
I can take the notes next meeting. I need to check because I have a conflict next week.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. No worries. It's okay. You are not available.
But
Let us know.
That's cool.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Interesting discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
Sure. Bye-bye.